Good afternoon, collectors and friends. You are in for a treat today. This is Trading Card Therapy, episode number 119. And I have my friend Graig Miller from Midlife Cards on YouTube. If you're not familiar, you should check out his channel. Joining us, and we're going to have a great discussion about anything and everything related to the hobby. And welcome to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 119. How are you today, Graig?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me. I've been watching Trading Card Therapy for a long time, so it's nice to be on.
Well, listen, I'm honored and humbled and really excited because, I do watch a variety of your content as well. And I always feel that when I leave either listening and or watching your content, a little bit more reinvigorated, a little bit more positive. And the reason why I say that is because, listen, I think you do a great job. You handle a lot of different questions, and they're not always the easiest, but you try to put a positive spin on them. So I appreciate that very much. And so for those that don't know you, Graig, if you could do me a favor and do us a favor, the community, just introduce yourself and maybe give a little bit of background on, who you are and I guess what led you to this path in terms of collecting and such.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Northern California and was an avid collector, like a lot of kids in the mid to late 80s, early 90s. The cool and unique thing for me is that my dad collected as a kid. He was born in 1950. So he was collecting late 50s, early 60s. And when my brother and I got back into it, my dad got back into it. And so for years, the three of us would, drive up and down the West Coast going to shows. And, I was never really 100% out of cards, but I didn't have a budget for cards. And so I dabbled here and there with things. In college, I got heavy into golf cards, vintage golf cards and stuff. And, when I got married and had kids, we had no money. But I found a way to still be involved. I started picking up some nostalgia cards like 86 rated rookie Jose Canseco, stuff like that. So I was still kind of there and always checking on a few cards. And then after the pandemic, I decided I wasn't fully aware of the whole YouTube thing. I watched a couple of different channels and I was like, I think this would be fun. And this would be a fun distraction from the horrors of what's going on in the world, is to have a distraction. And, it's expensive to be an active participant sometimes in the hobby. So I was like, this is a free way that I could be a participant and share my love about it. So I started my YouTube channel, which is Midlife Cards. The handle's at Midlife Cards on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I wouldn't say I'm active. I'm on Facebook. I wouldn't say I'm active. I'm not that good at those platforms. Mostly YouTube is my thing. And it's been a lot of fun. And my dad is still an active collector. He was heavy in it as they were rolling out grading and PSA and all that stuff. And he was an early adopter of PSA and grading, and he did really well for himself as a result. And he went to the National with me the last 2 years. He'll be at the National again with me this year. So it's fun to be able to do that with him. He's now 75. And so he's still involved. So that's kind of my story.
I got to be honest with you. I'm a little bit envious. I had to really bug the heck out of my dad just to throw a baseball in the backyard. But the notion of him coming to a convention with me, that wasn't going to happen, Graig.
Yeah.
So I think it's super cool that not only have you kind of stayed steadily in it, but that your father's kind of along with you by your side for the ride.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how many people have that opportunity in the hobby. I know I'm trying to impress upon it with my son. He goes kind of in and out with like one-piece cards and TCG cards, but that's a really special relationship that you have with you and your father. And a super great way to kind of stay in the hobby, as you mentioned, was YouTube, because really you don't have to pay anything. You know, whether
Yeah.
it be you're a content producer or you're just someone who wants to make comments, as you were alluding to, it's a nice way to feel part of something while maybe not having the same kind of money that, you know, your neighbor has or your buddy has.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I've always been creative at trying to figure out ways to be involved in things in a way that worked for me. My channel has gotten, I put out more content than I ever thought that I would. But part of that is, I think, again, trying to kind of just be distracted from some of the stuff going on. Like I just don't like paying attention to that kind of stuff. I used to drive to work. I was an AM talk radio guy, and by the time I got to work, my 25-minute drive, I was just so wound up. I was like, I got to figure something out. So I started streaming, you know, podcasts and listening to YouTube stuff, and it's been much happier. And my dad, you know, this will be the third national we'll be at together, but my dad's probably been to about 10. He was going when I was in college and you know, early in my marriage when I had no money. He was still very active in cards, and he was going to the national pretty much every year. So he's been to several more nationals than I've been to. So he's a very avid collector. So it's definitely cool. I'm definitely blessed. Um, my brother's not really gotten all back in yet, but he still is a participant. One of the things that I do is every Christmas and birthday, I give him a card, and he's a big Yankee fan. Like he watches every Yankee game, and I'm usually getting him, you know, some sort of vintage Yankee card, like a Joe Torre rookie or a Goose Gossage rookie or a, you know, Ron Guidry, something like that. So he likes it. So he's got younger kids than me, so he can't really be as in as we are.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you kind of sharing, you know, a number of different things as far as your background. I'm curious, do your tastes align with your father's collecting tastes? And if so, what does that look like? And if not, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So when he got back in, he wanted to collect the sets that he collected as a kid. So he started with the 1960 set, built that set out, wanted to have the best 1960 set on earth. He got as high as number 3 on the PSA set registry before he retired it. And then he built the 59 set and had a really, really nice 59 set. He ended up getting to the point where he had a lot of 8s and he had some 9s. And the value at that time, when the population was really low on some of those, it was getting so high that he ended up kind of liquidating out of some of those. We've always kind of done this thing in my family where we don't really do what the others are doing exactly, because then you're almost competing with them. So like I was, you know, my dad was a tennis player. Yeah, I know you're a tennis player. My dad
Yeah,
played
that's
college
cool.
tennis. Yeah, he played
Wow.
college tennis. It was really good. He was at that time they had Division 1, Division 2. That was it. And he was a Division 2 All-American. I think he made it to the Final Four one year.
Wow.
And yeah, he was very good. And so I got into golf, you know, and he did 59 and 60. And so I never really bought many 59 or 60 cards because that was his thing. So what would happen is I'd go to a show as a kid and I would hang out and I would go through the show. I was going through quarter boxes at the time, and I was a big Roger Clemens guy. And I liked Will Clark. I liked Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. So I was looking for cards of theirs that I didn't have in the dollar boxes, digging through those. And he would take longer going through the show in the vintage area. So when I got done, I would go hang out by my dad, and he would hang out at the vintage tables. And these are big shows. These are like, you know, big regional shows that used to happen in San Francisco every Labor Day weekend. There was a big show, and we would go. You were probably at some of them, Leighton, to be honest with you. I saw Mr. Mint. I was at his table a few times, and, you know, he'd tell me to run off, you know, get out of the way and stuff. But you know, what happened is I started to kind of find admiration for those vintage cards. And so the stuff that I'm into now is a lot of the stuff that I remember seeing then that kind of struck me. Like the tobacco cards being a unique size, being so old, seeing names like Ty Cobb and Cy Young when I'm like 10 years old. it like blew my mind. And so those are the cases that I remember looking at the most. And so,
Totally.
yeah. So getting back in, I'm like, that's kind of, where I went. And so when I say back in, being an active buyer.
Sure.
So I've been collecting a lot of the T206 Hall of Famers. I especially like the portraits. I've had a few of the quote unquote action shots that I buy them, and I'm like, some of them I like a lot. Some of them just I don't like as much, so I end up selling them off. But the portraits are just right up my alley. And so my dad, more recently, he has gotten into more middle to early 50s. So he kind of doesn't do 58, 59, or 60 anymore. He kind of checked that box. And so he's really into 56. He's really into 53 tops. That's kind of his thing at the moment. And I've been more pre-war. So we still don't really collect alike. And we admire what each other collects. We just don't really kind of have a lot of crossover.
You explained it so very well. And the reason why I can empathize with the way you were talking about it is shout out to my brother Merrick. He's a little bit younger than me. And when it came to sports, I also have two sisters, but they were never collecting. And to be fair, the only way they really played sports is if my brother and I forced them to, because as you can imagine, having four, you could play 2-on-2 anything. Yeah. 2-on-2 basketball, 2-on-2 football, so we did what we could. But I do remember, my brother wasn't nearly as into it as I was or am. But I remember that feeling of, I don't necessarily need, I'm making it up, an 85 tops Dwight Gooden, like my brother has one.
Right.
And it was a weird feeling because I didn't really have it. And, he had it, but it was kind of like the way you were suggesting, like, I don't need to show my brother up by having two.
Yeah.
And if we already have one, even though it's not mine, I know exactly what you mean. And it's a very weird dynamic to explain to someone else. But my brother and I also did not collect the same stuff. Maybe similar, but definitely not the same.
There's still some stuff that way with us. Like we both love the 53 tops Jackie Robinson, and it was on both of our lists. And my dad ended up buying one, and now I don't need one. Like he lives 2 miles from me. I could go over and hang out and look at his. Like it's weird how that is, where it's like you said, it's not like I have it, but we have it. And it's sort of like, but it's funny though, because there are some cards that I have had that he didn't have, but he bought anyway. So like I have a 57 tops Brooks Robinson rookie. And he liked the card. And even though I had one, he still bought one. And then I had a 56 Ted Williams, tops Ted Williams. And he liked the card and he still bought one. But then I ended up selling my Ted Williams because I was like, I don't need one of these. He has one. So it is funny. It's a weird thing like that.
It is. It's a very strange. And the thing is, if you were talking to someone else about a different object, they would make no sense to people. But because you and I are talking about something that's near and dear to our hearts, I know exactly what you mean. And to be honest, it was not on my agenda for today, but it was just too good of a nugget to not share with you how I also experienced basically something very similar with my brother.
Yeah. And he was a big Mantle guy. He's a Yankee fan. He grew up watching the Yankees when the Yankees were in the 50s and then CBS owned the Yankees at that time. And so they were on the game of the week a lot. So, when you see sort of like how there are so many Braves and Cubs fans because they'd see them on TV. And so he's a big Mantle guy. So like I don't own a single Mickey Mantle card. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, well, that's my dad's guy. Like, why would I buy Mantle cards? That's his player. So it's definitely a weird thing, but it kind of, I think, shows more of a partnership about it. And even to a certain extent, some of my friends who have cards, I have a lot of friends in the hobby. If they have a card, I don't have as much desire to get that card because my buddy has one.
Yeah. Shout out to a mutual friend of ours, Tony Southern Collector, right?
Yeah.
And Tony doesn't know this, even though he might know part of it. So I saw him last year at Strongsville. Shout out to the Strongsville show, whoever's going to be there. Really looking forward to seeing each and every one of you. Our company, Just Collect, will be set up. Also be set up with Mark for Auction Wire. So stop on by. It's going to be great. So Tony shows me last Strongsville. I don't want to get it wrong, but I think he bought like an E91 Rube Marquard signed copy.
Yeah. Yeah, he
And I'm
did.
like, wow, that's really dope. And I've had on my list a T206. I wanted a signed Marquard portrait, especially after reading Glory of Their Times. I'm not done with it yet, but I'm making my way. I'm planning to be done by the National. So shout out to my buddy Jim Ector who recommended me the book. So anyway, after seeing that card, I might have seen one more example of it. I don't recall. I mean, I could just be making this up. My point is, as cool as I thought it was, and Tony's not related to me by blood or other that I know of, at least. I love his card, but I agree with you. And I don't know what's the psychology, but it's so fascinating to me that we're both on the same wavelength. I don't really, and I didn't really feel the need to go procure that card, even though it's super cool. So somehow, and you know how you can manifest things sometimes in your life, Greg, well, I can't make this up. It was one of very few specific items I was looking for at the National. And, a younger-ish kid comes on by with a bunch of nice pre-war. He was focusing on some autographs. And I'm going through. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And I try to play it cool because I come across like my white whale for the National. I'm like, get out of here. You have this Marquard. Meanwhile, inside of like rockets are going off. I'm like, this is amazing. And as long as he quoted some sort of reasonable price, I was going to buy it. And I did buy it. But I still don't feel the need or the desire today to acquire an E91 signed Marquard, but yet I love the card. I know my buddy Tony has it, and I don't exactly know why, because it's not mine, but I think it's super cool that my friend has one, and I don't necessarily need it. And it doesn't go like that all the time, but it's so fascinating that we have similar thinking as far as these little hobby nuances go.
100%. And it's like growing up, I was such a competitive kid. Like I couldn't play video games with my brother because if I lost, I could not. I literally did damage to video game systems. Like,
oh, come
like
on, Greg. You saw what was it? What was it in Swingers when they're playing Sega Genesis hockey?
Oh yeah.
I mean, our house between my brother
bleeds out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was like one of the best scenes ever.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're someone who likes the movie Swingers, let us know. I mean, that was just classic. Or if you played video games to the point where there could have been damage to the walls, drop something in the comments to let us know, because I can tell you there was definitely holes in the wall from being a kid playing with my brother. Yeah. And then absolutely, to be fair, there may have been alcohol involved, but we used to come back from like going out in college, okay, on like a Thursday or Friday night. And, eventually I moved into an off-campus house, Greg, and we would play whatever it was, James Bond or, a hockey. People were like, we weren't just trash talking. It got a little violent at times. Yeah. And I have no idea why, but those are some of the craziest and fun days of my life.
But I have the exact same thing with many of the exact same games even. Yeah. But with cards, this community, I don't know if I've aged or what, but now I like actively am rooting for my friends to get cards. Like when I get a text message that says this is what I picked up, or Tony posted a video this morning and it had some amazing stuff that he added to his amazing collection. And like, I'm like genuinely happy for him. Whereas back in the day, there was like this competition thing. So I don't know if it's age or if it's the community or what, but it's very cool. But yeah, it's definitely a quirk to collecting that whole thing. So
I agree. And it's a little bit out of order for me, but since we're talking about this, I know what it means to me, but I wanted to ask you, and we're starting to allude to it now. It really is fun to collect cards, no matter what genre, sport. If you're a player collect, you type collect, you flight collect, to quote our buddy Jeremy, right? But people collect all different things of shapes and sizes, but specifically the vintage community where you and I are a little bit more heavily immersed in it. You were alluding to it just a minute ago. What does it mean to you as we've gotten a little bit older?
It's been a life-changing experience for me. The thought that starting a YouTube channel is something I would even do is crazy. But the thought that I have some of my best friends are spread out all over the country. I mean, Mookie lives near you out in New Jersey. I love Mookie. I mean, he's one of my best friends. Tony's one of my best friends. He lives in Tennessee. My buddy Darren returned to collecting. He lives in Colorado. And then Mike Petty lives down in LA. I mean, and I have to stop there because otherwise I'll leave somebody out, and then they'll go, oh, what about me? But I got friends all over the country. And it's not just card friends. It's cards are the connector. They're the thing that helped me meet these people, but they're not just card friends. I mean, there have been people who have gone through some real life stuff that we've gone through together, and shared, grief, and we've been there as support, as people have dealt with all sorts of illness or death. There's a recent death in the YouTube community of a content creator, and it's like they're my friends. Like, they're not my card friends, they're my friends. And it's really wild that has happened. And I take it, it's weird that there are people that I only met in person once or twice that mean as much to me as they do. And there have been times I've gotten emotional about, not just the time that I spent together. I mean, we met for the first time. I saw you, I think at the Strongsville show in 2024. We actually spoke last year in 2025, but like, last year, and I don't know what this means about me that I'm going to share this story, but it is what it is. I just am who I am. After the trade night, that on Saturday night last year at the Strongsville show, like, I went back to my room because I was leaving early Sunday morning. So I had to go around and say goodbye to everybody Saturday night. And I went back to my room. I started sobbing because it was over. That this is the only time I get to hang out with some people that I really care about. And some of them, I was going to see them a few months later at the National, and some of them I knew I wasn't going to see for another year, or who knows. And it's like, that's crazy to me. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm an introverted teacher from Northern California who's like losing it emotionally because of friends he's not going to get to see again, while I'm in some random city south of Cleveland with people from all over the country. So it's not, it means more than it means more than people could think. And I don't know how I come across on screen. I sit on my bed. I put my phone on this tiny little tripod I bought for a camera. I have no money invested in this thing. And I talk into it, and I share my thoughts, and I open my heart, and I tell people all sorts of stuff about my life. And I don't know, there are probably haters out there and people who think this and think that. But I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, what you see is what I am. It is what it is. And the people who aren't feeling it, that's okay. But I am the guy that you see on screen, and a lot of the guys are. And it makes it really easy that when you're together, just picking up right where you left off, because they're genuine people that don't have an agenda. Now, there are agendas out there. There are some personalities out there that can be a little bit, triggering at times. But the overwhelming majority of this group of people, I feel truly blessed to be connected to.
I mean, I second everything that you said.
Because I'm so open, because I've shared stories about, health stuff that I've gone through, because I've shared stories about my dad and had my dad on the channel a few times. And, the other day, my wife made a little cameo in an episode, and I talk about my kids, and I show you videos of my daughter who golfs, of her golfing, and my soccer daughter playing soccer. And I talk about them. That it's like, it does break down some barriers of people know me, and I go to shows and people come up to me all the time and say, I know we've never met, but I feel like I know you. And I'm like, you do. And a lot of people who I've never met or seen their face, like, I know we all know Bob Boozle. Like, Bob Boozle is a world-class commenter. And I've messaged him many times on Instagram. I'm like, you gotta come on. And he's just like, he always gives me some line back, but it's like, I know Bob Boozle. I've never met him. I don't even know what he looks like, but I know him, and I will shout out my book, that,
Excellent. Well, I was just about to ask you about this because I know that, Mark grabbed a couple. I have some friends that grabbed a couple, but I know, if I'm not mistaken, that your dad is involved in the book. I haven't read it yet.
yeah. So my dad's heavily involved in the book, and
So tell us
and
about
it,
it, Greg.
yeah. So basically, what it is I I have, as I've gotten older, as my dad has gotten older, one of the things that I don't want to lose is I don't want to lose stories. I don't want to lose memories. My uncle passed away 2, 3 years ago. All my grandparents are gone, and my dad lost his wife 2, 3 years ago. And one of the things I loved the most when I'd spend time with my grandparents and my uncle is I'd ask questions, and I'd say, "Tell me about this. What was this like when you were growing up? And where did you work here?" And I just wanted to hear about them. And the problem is when somebody is gone, the stories just slowly fade away until here we are 2, 3 generations later, and most of the world doesn't know we ever even existed. And that's a whole different can of worms. But I wanted to be able to capture some stories from my dad about cards. And so I sat and I interviewed him, and I recorded it. It was private. I didn't post it or anything, for like 4 hours. And I just asked him questions and about stories and about events and about adventures. And the book it's 20 different stories about cards, and about 12 to 14 of them were kind of my adventures, like trades I made as a kid, or information I found out that I was able to get a good deal on a card because of, to even things as recently as 4 or 5 months ago are in there. And then some of them are my dad's stories, and then some of them are stories we did together. And I wanted to capture them. There's so much negativity. It's like every time I turn around, there's whatnot, this, thing happening, and there's this with this scandal and that scandal. And I don't, there's a lot that could tear down the hobby. But what the hobby is really about, and it's like the auction wire quote, it's not just the cards, it's the chase of the card, and the adventure of getting to the card is sometimes, and the memory attached to acquiring the card, and that sometimes makes the card so much more important to us than it could mean to anybody else. And then that memory, if it's just gone, then that part of it, that part of the legacy of that card is gone. Like the video you did the other day about, the T206 card, and the who was it?
Oh,
What
the
was
Eddie
it?
Plank.
The Eddie Plank card. And it was like that, because you talked to that guy and interviewed him and posted that video, even though it was a short video, like now that memory lives on for that story.
It's exactly
And
why I did it, Greg. I actually
yeah,
stopped what I was doing at the event after the Philly show, and I thought the guy was putting me on. I think his name is Jim. And I said, wait a minute. You bought an Eddie Plank, forget about the money,
yeah.
in this fashion? And I said, can I interview you? Because of exactly what you said. I
Mhm.
just feel like a little bit of a obligation to a hobby and a business that has treated me very well, that I would like to give back. And I like sharing these stories. I think they're fun. I think others appreciate them.
And you did an
Um,
interview a couple years ago at the Strongsville show with a longtime collector. And I know his face and I know where his table was, but I don't know his name. But you did an interview with him, and he's been in the hobby forever. He owned
oh,
a
Gary, yeah.
restaurant
Yeah,
across.
Gary
Yeah.
Nooch, Gary the
And,
Nooch.
and
Yeah.
it was fantastic story. And those are the sorts of things that I don't want to lose them. And I want to always say, at the end of the day, the the story and the memory is that's really the center of the hobby. At least it is for me, and the cards, that how I acquired them or who I was with when I acquired them, make those cards extra special. And so I really did it selfishly. I wasn't really, I was like, am I going to publish this? Like, I don't know. I just wanted to capture stories, and then I wanted to find a way to time capsule them so that I wouldn't lose them. So if someday my dad won't be here or I won't be here, I don't know what'll happen first, but whatever happens is I wanted that memory to be able to have longevity. And so I started to write this. And as a teacher, I have summers off. So it was last summer. I was kind of bored one afternoon, and I can't sit still, like, apparently. So I just started doing this, and I started writing out my stories, and then interviewed my dad and started writing out his stories. And what I realized that I didn't even know I would realize, and it's funny that I'm on Trading Card Therapy talking about this, but literally trading cards have been therapy for me and for my dad. And they're a big crutch that we leaned on during some of the tougher times of our lives. And I didn't even know that until I started writing these. And I said, oh my gosh, this time when I was heavy into cards, it was because of this. And my dad was heavy into cards because of this. And then a couple of years, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago or so, when my dad's wife passed away, and he was struggling. I mean, let's face it, he lost his wife. And I was like, he needs cards. And I started dragging him back to card shows. I'm like, Dad, we're going to a card show. He's like, oh, okay. I mean, I'll go hang out with you, and I'd start sending him links. Hey, Dad, check out this card. I'm thinking about this one. And then it got him back up, and it got him going again. And that is the thing that the hobby provides, is it's not just a way to kill time. It literally is a therapy for our soul, to help us to be distracted from some of the stuff going on, and something to focus on, and something positive for our minds. And literally writing this was like going to a therapist. I mean, there were times I would start tearing up as I was typing stuff, as I was like remembering things and going through things. And so it means a lot to me. And it's not one of these things, I didn't do it to like make money, but at the same time, I do believe that people who take the time to read it, I genuinely think people would like it and relate to it. And I just want the stories to live on. And so, like, when I was at a local card shop and my dad found one of his own childhood cards, literally one of his cards from his childhood in the wild at a card shop 30 years ago, which he ended up acquiring and now has, like, for sure, his card from his childhood collection. I tell the whole story of how that happened and how his cards went missing and everything. Like, I want that story to live on. And by doing this, it allows it to live on.
I think it's tremendous. You also did a wonderful job explaining to my audience why it's called Trading Card Therapy. So thank you for that. But the joking aside, Graig, if someone wants to order your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, easiest way is Amazon. It's on Amazon, Midlife Card Collecting Stories. And then, I had some people who, watched the channel and they wanted a signed copy. So I set up a way that people could get a signed copy if they want me to inscribe it or sign it. And that's through, I have a website with Mike Junkwax Hero and Adam of Splendid Sports. It's called the Sports Card Clubhouse. And if you go to the Sports Card Clubhouse website, there's a midlife link, a tab. And under the midlife tab, one of the two things in there is a link to be able to give me your information, your address, payment. And then, like, I literally had one that I signed and inscribed and I mailed to a guy in Japan. And he emailed me today and said that it arrived. So it's pretty cool. But Amazon's the easiest. But if somebody did want to sign, or if you ever see me in a show, my plan is to always have like 5 in my backpack. So if somebody sees me in a show, that would be a way to do it too.
Before we run out of time, there was something else that I wanted to go over. I guess first, I'll save this other question for later if we have time. But I've been watching and consuming your content now for a bit of time, and I know that you have a few different shows. You also started a new podcast with our buddy Mike from Junk Wax Hero.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to give you the opportunity to go through and share the rundown of your content so that if folks want to find you and reach out or start listening and enjoying your content the way that I do and others do, I'd like to make sure they can find you. And then second of all, because you were alluding to this earlier, almost like, I guess, at the beginning of the show today, I'd like you to maybe share a word or two of encouragement and how someone can get started as a content creator, and to make sure that folks know, there's no judge and jury. So in other words, you can start off, and whether it be have 1 view or 1 million, we're not sitting here as the vintage community judging other content creators based on how many views someone gets or achieves. It's about the value that you bring to the community, or the enthusiasm, or the stories that you have. I mean, I know that's one of the main reasons why, for example, Greg, like I write blogs about the collections that we purchase, not all of them, but some of them, because people would never believe that I bought a 52 tops mantle that was stored in a pickle jar in Canada. And if I don't document it, it's just going to be another Mickey Mantle. And there's nothing wrong with that either, but I have too much love for the hobby to let that story go by the wayside. And I think you feel similar. And so if you could, I guess, address both of those. One, which is, hey, what's the list of programming, and what are the days or the times and all that good stuff, how they find you, and also, your new show with Mike. But then as a side note, maybe just like a 3 or 4 point checklist, a couple bullets for someone who, whether it be you're 15 or you're 65 and anywhere in between, you've been thinking about doing some content. You're not sure people are going to like it. You're nervous. You think it's too costly. Wanting to help those folks as well. Mike.
Yeah, for sure. So on YouTube, Midlife Cards. So it's at Midlife Cards. Mondays, I do an Ask the Audience question. So on Monday, I'll go over what everybody responded from my question to the community the previous Monday. And then at the end of the episode, I ask another question. And I'm not a show cards and teach type thing. There are a lot of guys that are really good at that. That's not my lane. My lane is more of philosophical, like, where should I go? What should I do? What are some opportunities? This versus that. I try to be, the way I describe it is, if you go to church and the priest is talking to one person in the room, he's not that effective. But if everybody can leave and think, man, it felt like that applied to me, then that is an effective message, and that's an effective communicator. And so I try to speak in terms of not I'm right, you're wrong, this is up, that's down. It's not factual. It's just philosophical. And that's kind of my thing. So Mondays, I share people's opinions, their responses. I read them out. I give my thoughts on them. Wednesdays, I do a Q&A just by simply putting in the comments of one of my videos, a question. I pick 5 a week. I respond to those 5. Then on Friday or Saturday, sometimes both, a lot of the times both, I'll do another episode, which could be anything like when you came on my channel the other day and we had a really cool discussion. It could be interviewing other people. It could be me digging into some data and looking at what's happening on PSA prices versus SGC prices. It could be me going to a card show and a vlog of that experience. But I've put out 3 or more videos every week for 3.5 years. I haven't missed a single week. And in a lot of cases, it's been 4, and occasionally I'll even do 5, which is a lot. And it's bordering on ridiculous. But I just love it, and it's an escape from me, and I love the community. So that's kind of a rundown of what I do. I don't break them up and do shorts. I don't break them up and do, Instagram reels. I think of myself as a podcaster who is on video on YouTube, is kind of more of what I do. That said, I did start a secondary channel with Adam and Mike, and we have an episode called Surface Issues that Mike and I record on Thursdays that posts every Saturday morning. And that's on the Sports Card Clubhouse YouTube channel. It also posts on Spotify or any podcast format. The Sports Card Clubhouse. We have Mike and I on Saturdays. My Q&As from Wednesdays, those post on Sundays. And then we have a smattering of other things. Like I've had other interviews that I've done with like Ashish. He's come on there with me a couple of times and talked. And I had Jeremy Donson on the other day, and he came on, and that'll post on there. And then we have some other contributors in the community, because we don't want it to be just me and Mike. We want it to be a bunch of us. So we have a lot of other kind of duo conversationalist types, Tony Liebrick included, with Mike Petty. They had their first appearance on the other day. So that's, again, the Sports Card Clubhouse on YouTube, and then Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you can find podcast stuff. As far as to people out there, I literally have $0 invested in my channel. I have a cell phone. I have a tripod that is a little tripod I use for a camera that I just turned into this. I guess I spent $18 once on a chest mount. When I'm at a card show, I put a chest mount on, and I have my phone. Sometimes I'll hit record as I'm doing stuff. The thing about this community is people think that some of the names of guys that have been around for a while will like look down on you, but it's quite the contrary. One of the first people to shout out a new channel is John Mangini. Like, he is, if there's a new channel, he will share your stuff out like quickly. Sammy Thunder is one of the first people, the first place that I was ever invited on. The first appearance I made on another channel was through Sammy Thunder. He's a very community-based, open-armed guy. It's not about how good you are. It's about how much you care. And people can tell if you care. And if you care, even if you're not tech savvy, put the camera on, hit record, stand in front of it and talk. And a lot of people, that's their channel, is they don't even edit out the beginning and the end. If you care, people care about passion, and they care about being involved with other passionate people. And it doesn't cost money. It's really easy. It's not that hard. Watch a couple of YouTube tutorials, and you'd be surprised that pretty much anyone you can think of, if you reach out to them and you say, hey, can I come on your channel? Or will you come on my channel? Everyone I know has been on channels that have I've been on channels that have 15 subscribers to 10,000 subscribers. I don't go, oh, well, no, you're not big enough. It's not good enough for me. That's not how this community is. Everybody is literally rooting for each other.
I agree. I feel like we're all rooting for each other. We'll get to see, a lot of our common friends in Strongsville in just a few weeks. I'd love to join you on a future episode on your new Clubhouse show with you and Mike. I think we'd have a fun time chopping up some interesting hobby questions. I had an idea about doing some debates, because I think it's like hobby debates. Debates,
yeah.
right?
No,
nothing political, of course.
I love it.
But I wanted to close with something that I think is fun, and I don't do this all the time, but I know how immersed you are in the space. So tell me, on the one hand, something that you love about the hobby currently, then tell me something that you want to change about the hobby currently.
Well, the easy thing is for me to say the friendships and the relationships. I love going to card shows, and I love, this is going to sound like a plug, but I love digging for things that I don't think I'm going to find. And like Auction Wire, I got an alert yesterday morning about a card that I was looking for. It helps you find stuff. whether it's scrolling through eBay, whether it's going through Fanatics Marketplace, whether it's using Auction Wire, whether it's going to card shows, like the hunting for cards. Like I live in gold country outside of Sacramento in the foothills there. And literally we have a river that is a third of a mile from my house that I pan for gold in. And I literally can take a pan and go through it, and there will be little specks of gold in there, and it is a thrill. And that to me is every time you go to a card show, every time you scroll, every time you search for something on Auction Wire or any other site, to me, that thrill of, oh my gosh, this popped up, like that is an adrenaline rush that I can't even describe into words. That's my favorite thing about the hobby. The least favorite thing I have about the hobby, I think, is the obsession that still lingers with the number on a slab. To see a card that has a 2 and people go, oh, well, that's not very good of a card because, if I got 20% on a test in school, then that was terrible. Like the way that the grading works is I feel like it makes anything that's not a 10 feel like it's an inferior card. And that bothers me because some of my most loved cards are some of my favorite cards in my collection. And I feel like we're starting to turn the corner on the obsession with the number. I feel like we're starting to go, when we see these videos about some inconsistencies, and one time it's an 8 and then it's a 6, and wait a second, I thought it was an 8. How could it be a 6? And you start to see these things, then people start to go, you know what? This is just an opinion. And I think that a lot of people have started to move off of it, and they use it as a starting reference point instead of the be all and end all. And so I don't like how much the number plays a factor. It's like, imagine the card that you think is an 8 and it comes back a 5. That ruins the card for some people, but it's the same card. It's still a great card. So
Agreed.
that is the thing that bugs me the most, is how the grading affects the way we look at cards. But I do feel like there's hope there on that.
Agreed. And if you're into eye appeal and you want to check out that whole movement, check out our buddy Matty C's new site, Eye Appeal Inc. It's very interesting. And it's focusing on collectors such as you and I, Greg, putting our own stuff up there and having opinions from the community, like the way they would do Rotten Tomatoes about like a Netflix show. So I think that's super cool. This has been a blast. I'm going to ask one more quick question on the way out, because I know there isn't a vintage collector out there, no matter what you have, doesn't appreciate a tip on how to collect vintage on a budget. So if you could share one closing tip about that, because I know Greg, I listen to enough of your content, do a wonderful job of fielding questions from folks, but there is a huge amount of folks out there, Greg, and this, that were either involved in the hobby in their childhood or coming back now, or they've never been involved in the hobby and they want to be involved, but they're overwhelmed because, things are expensive. Eggs cost $10 a dozen, right? So, the dollar box now costs $5. And, of course, I'm trying to be a little bit over exaggerated here, but what's like a closing remark that you can offer some hope to an aspiring vintage collector that's on a budget?
Number one, I'm going to give you 2. Number 1,
Good. 2 for
auctions.
Like
whenever there's an auction, things slip through the cracks.
Yep.
And auctions are opportunities. And so when you see a card up for auction, even if you think it's going to go out of your price range, watch it, like it, follow it, keep an eye on it, because you never know. And there are times that things make their way at a lower price than you would have expected. And it doesn't need to be an expensive card to be a cool card or a card worth owning. It doesn't have to be an expensive hobby. But the main thing I would recommend is find a category that's not yet in vogue. Find something that you like the looks of that other people aren't talking about and other people aren't obsessed with, because they're out there. They are, sometimes it's oversized for whatever reason. People aren't into oversized stuff. Maybe they're not into food issue stuff. There are absolutely cards. And I was talking the other day about some political pre-war cards, like presidential pre-war cards. Some of those are still very affordable. And I even bought some not that long ago in an auction that I'm jazzed off of. So when you follow the trend, you're always trailing. You're always behind the curve. The way you get ahead of the curve and you find an opportunity is you kind of take the path less traveled. If you're walking down the path and it splits and one is worn and one doesn't look like it's as worn, you don't know if is it that the same person's going down the same, and if everyone's going over there to the left, what's over to the right? Because nobody else has gotten to see it. I think that it's not always best to follow what everyone else is doing. Look for opportunities that other people aren't into yet. As long as you're into it, it's worth collecting.
Listen, I think it's a great point. For those that are going to be in Strongsville, please look up Graig and I and our vintage posse, if you will.
Yeah.
We'll be there, and we'll be hopefully in great numbers. Graig, thank you so much for joining us today here on Trading Card Therapy. It's been a wonderful chat with you today.
I'm honored to be here, and I look forward to having you back on, not just with me, but also we'll have you on Surface Issues. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to start teeing up some things we could debate, but tell Mike I said hey, and I look forward to talking to you real soon.
Will do. Thanks, Leighton.
Take it easy. All right, guys, this is Trading Card Therapy episode number 119. Today's episode is sponsored by Auction Wire. It's not just about the card, it's the chase. If you'd like more details, check it out at auctionwire.ai. And if you're going to be at the Strongsville show, make sure you come on by our booth for a demonstration of the software. See you real soon.